Well, we're going to welcome everyone because it is now 9 o'clock and we're pretty good. We start pretty sharp. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this, your Women's Fund. We know that this is a community plaza and we're all here to get things done together to make and foster collective impact. So first I have to thank the Miami Dolphins Football Unites because they are the ongoing sponsor of this series. And they're also great partners who work with many of us in the community. Many of you who are here, I can see in the audience, Football Unites partners with many of us. And the last thing we all did together, many of us, was work on the Get Out the Vote campaign. So congratulations to everybody.
Yay, well done.
I have to tell you that the current board of the Women's Fund Miami-Dade is full of extraordinary, hardworking people. And they're putting in extraordinary hours right now. So I have to give a special shout out this time. Many of you are on there. And thank you so very, very, very much for it. This is a pivotal time and you're pivoting. Amazing, amazing, strong, hardworking folks. Thank you so much. We have some amazing community partners. Hi, YWCA is here. So many of you, direct service providers. Very many of you here today have RSVP'd. And let's be honest, donors, you're so important. You make this organization tick. It's the smaller donors who are, many of you donated today when you jumped on. Some are long-term endowment donors. We know, as we know about the topic today, that funding matters. So thank you and feel thanked. Feel thanked. It's very powerful what you contribute. So on we go. And we're going to talk about the topic today, hunger and homelessness. You'll remember this public awareness campaign that we did with the support last year, the Florida Blue Foundation. And we're going to go on to the next slide, which is a great focuser that was given to us by Mario Artecona, one of our experts here today. 90% of the homeowners from Habitat are women. Isn't that interesting? It's fantastic that we see this gender lens, this gender focus on women today here in our plaza. It's, in this case, 90% of those women who are working hard, they're doing it. They're taking care of their families, and organizations like Habitat are giving them the tools to do it. Another very special shout out, again, if you didn't hear us before, Annie Lord and company, Miami Homes for All has put together this great focusing lens on today's issue. Some of the facts: 35% of households in Miami-Dade make $35,000 a year or less. 84% of households are cost burdened, meaning they're spending over 30% of their income on rent or mortgage. Miami Homes for All recommends producing and preserving affordable homes for 210,000 households by 2030. And today we are here to look at how we might be able to get there. So although I can't see more than your names on our screen today, our board and our staff know a lot about you attendees. We know that you care about the well-being of women and girls. We know that you care that they all have opportunities to feel safe, healthy, capable, and prosperous. And we know that you came to join us here in putting on your gender lens, because we know that lenses do make a difference. We also know that you can make a difference. And so today we join you with thought leadership from our community who can help us to focus on what we should know and what we can do. That leads me to the great honor of introducing our next expert, one who works not only tirelessly for her community, but also, especially these days, with us, the Women's Fund Miami-Dade's new chair of the board, Gloria Romero Rosas. Gloria.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Mari. I appreciate you, not just in putting this together, but frankly, leading the way for our work as interim executive director of the Women's Fund. So here. Thank you so much to our established panelists for joining us and sharing your wisdom and insight. My role today is going to be to provide some context because this is a complex issue and complex issues require focus and an ability to float above a lot of the numbers, but just drill down enough to give us the insight so that we can actually get at solutions, right? And so we want to roll up our sleeves and get to those solutions in today's conversation. Thank you so much for sharing the Miami Homes for All framework. And I want to pivot right off of that statistic that you shared, which is the goal of having 210,000 units to meet the needs of affordable housing for the next 10 years. If we break that down into annual, if you will, targets, that means we've got to be producing 21,000 units every year for the next 10 years. So I thought it would be helpful if we got as a point of reference what that could look like. Next slide, please. So this particular, actually the slide that has the, yes, thank you, the Affordable Housing Tracker. So last year, literally a year ago, the Public Housing and Community Development Department hosted the Closing In on 10,000, a housing summit. And it was convened, and what came out of that convening was an ambitious goal set to create an environment that would support at least 10,000 new affordable or workforce units being created or being in progress by November of this year. So literally 1 year ago. So if you look at this tracker, note that if 113 developments would achieve that 10,000 goal, as of yesterday, that Miami-Dade housing tracker shows that we're 17 in the planning stages, 11 under RFP review, 35 in pre-development, 35 under construction, and we've been able to complete 15. So just think, if we aimed to actually double the result of the Closing In on 10,000 goal to 21,000 per year to achieve that 200,000 that we need by 2030, we will have to aggressively scale the number of developments in each of these stages in order to be successful. So let's talk about what some of the possible obstacles and causes are. If you could go to next slide, please. First, everybody is always talking at the top of their list, the regulatory burdens. And what I think is most important for us to be brutally honest about is that we have 31 cities in Miami-Dade County with 31 regulatory processes. And we have the county and they have their regulatory process. So when you think about the scale that we're talking about now, right? 21,000 units in production every single year, that set of processes have to be perfectly aligned and to be as efficient as possible so that this does not stall or delay that production capacity. Next slide, please. Secondly, money. At the end of the day, this is about having dedicated revenue stream. Everybody talks in this field about the Sadowski Act. Everybody is frustrated and disappointed that for the last 11 years, that Sadowski Trust Fund was swept by the Florida legislature. And this past year, in the 2020 legislative session, when we finally all screamed hooray because the governor and the legislature agreed to 280 some odd million and not sweep the entire trust fund to go towards affordable housing development, the pandemic hit. And in August, the governor vetoed that 280 some odd million dollar allocation. And so that's right now sitting in trust fund, frozen, unable to be put to use. So bottom line, we have a dedicated revenue stream for the entire state. It is insufficient to meet the needs of Miami-Dade County. So we will need to have a dedicated revenue stream that is just for Miami-Dade and that will frankly be able to be controlled by Miami-Dade. Next slide, please. So, there's a lot of conversation affordable housing, but we also have to realize that workforce housing matters. And workforce housing is at a different threshold in terms of level of income, but we have to understand that it puts pressure on the more affordable and low to moderate income housing that's available. So if we don't build workforce housing for that level of the market, and more importantly, if we don't incentivize and catalyze private development, then we're going to continue to put pressure on the lower affordable housing product that's in the marketplace. So we've got to be able to get the private sector involved and more importantly, incentivize them to ramp up their production of workforce housing. Next slide, please. As you can see by this particular slide that came out of the Miami Homes for All framework for housing report, we have tiers. So this 0 to 30% AMI is a family of 4 earning $27,000 a year. The 0 to 50 AMI is a family of 4 earning $45,000 a year. And the 0 to 80 is a family of 4 earning $73,000 a year. And you can see very clearly that at those different income levels, there are still huge gaps of available housing that, again, is within that 30% of discretionary income. Next slide, please. We have a lot of public land. A lot of people talk about the underutilized assets, but fundamentally, this is a process. And we just talked earlier, from the tracker, we have 15 projects currently under an RFP. That process has to be very streamlined. It has to be laser focused on reducing the time from when an RFP is issued to the point that it's contracted in order to really generate the results that we want. Next slide, please. Ultimately, stagnant wages is going to be an issue. And as we try to come out of the COVID-19 pandemic downturn, we have to be laser focused as a community on how we continue to grow our economy to provide high paying jobs. Next slide, please. So what we need, comprehensive strategy. Thank you, Miami Homes for All, for an amazing springboard for learning and collaboration. 2, to seize the urgency of the moment. It is now. And if it's not us, then who? And 3, my recommendation personally, as somebody that's been looking at this for a long time, is that we need a dedicated cabinet position. We need a chief housing officer. And to that end, I researched and prepared a white paper that I submitted to my Affordable Housing Advisory Board at the county level. I'm an appointee of the Commissioner Higgins, and I believe that a chief housing officer in Miami-Dade County could bring the kind of focus and urgency that we need, given the springboard that we have in the Miami Homes for All framework, to really drive the combined efforts of not just the public sector through an amazing work that Director Liu is doing, but also the private sector, and catalyze the kind of private sector innovation, focus, energy, capital to make these numbers possible. So with that, I thank you so much the opportunity to share some context, and I look forward to hearing some of the amazing solutions that our panelists are going to share with us.
That's so powerful. Thank you, Gloria, for this and all that you do. So this is how this works. This is your community gathering. Remember that you're in a central plaza and you're focused on women and girls. It's your gender lens, and we're here to work together. Amazing list of attendees. Thank you all for your work and all you do. Stronger together, we most certainly are. We want to hear from you. We're going to have 3 polls, and we do a lot with polls these days because we've got smart board members who've helped us figure it out. So we are getting great research, and we're going to share it with all of you. So these polls do make a difference. Please do take it. We want to hear. One of the great ideas that we had is to give you another resource, because we really believe that building connections is crucial, not only for our mission, but for all of our missions, and to make a stronger fabric of this community. So you'll see the opportunity in the poll to ask if you'd like to have further contact with any one of the speakers or the organizations who you've heard speaking today. So this doesn't end here. We go forward, and we will connect you. We take that mission very seriously. And other things we take very seriously is that we know that we're going to keep on time, and we do know that our mayor is about to arrive. But
she's actually already connected, Maria.
Already connected, and I don't see everything because I've got a lot of stuff on my screen. Good morning, Madam Mayor. Good morning, Madam Mayor. So who would ever want to limit the first female mayor of our community and one of our great leaders to 2 minutes of introduction? But she's a very fair person, And so we ask each of our panelists today to first, we're going to go in the general order here with the mayor first, asking her to introduce herself in context of today's topic in 2 minutes. Madam Mayor, staff tells me Madam Mayor is there. I believe them.
I think her name is showing up as Andrea Picardo.
Oh, there we
You'll be
go.
connecting with us in 1 second.
All right, now can you see and hear me?
Good morning and good health. And we're
Good
thrilled to
morning.
have you. Thank you for being here.
Very good, very good. Well, wonderful to be with you. Of course, Women's Fund is like my very fave. And to all of you who are listening, you know the importance of women's voice in getting things done. You know, like my billboard said during the campaign, I'm sorry, gentlemen, they broke it, I'll fix it. So just to say, it doesn't require a woman, but you know what? It's women's time. So I'm very grateful that I was elected to serve in this role and very eager to continue to help women to make strides. And we know that inequality is structural. It's something that is actually part of our DNA, unfortunately. And so we have to work really hard to overcome the biases and prejudices and structural, the structures that have inhibited women's advancement in our society. You know, I've been often asked, what does it mean to me that I'm a woman elected? And what I think of is what it means to my 3-year-old granddaughter, Lena, who many of you hopefully saw speaking on social media. Vote for my nonna, please, please, please. I'm sure that got me a few votes. But the point is that for her, it's really the same, whether I'm reading her a story or whether I'm running for mayor. It's something that her nonna can do. So I'm very, very proud of that fact, the new normal, if you will, hopefully for girls. And I know many, many of my friends who have daughters have said that the daughters were very inspired by my win. And I'm ready to do a daughters roundtable and talk to the young women about what's ahead for them in their future. So as commissioner, I did embrace the inequality agenda, if you will, to promote equality. And actually the very first piece of legislation I worked on was CEDAW, which is the UN Treaty Convention to End Discrimination in all forms against women. And we became the first county in the nation to adopt this treaty, which was not adopted by our country, sadly. Only a few other countries have not adopted it, so we were definitely on the wrong side of that. But once we adopted it locally, we were able to produce an annual report on the status of women and girls and to move forward with some important changes, focusing on pay equity in county contracts, resources for women who are the victims of domestic violence, pay equity in the county to make sure that county government itself was more equitable, and quite a few other things. But there's so much still to do. And let's just remember that women, unfortunately, once they're paid less in the beginning of their career, they stay at a lower pay grade throughout. That leads to greater levels of poverty, even in retirement, and greater poverty levels for children and women, because women so often are heading households as single parents, and their wages low means that the children are more often in poverty. So some of these issues have to be addressed with not only improvements in the pay scale, those opportunities, but also for providing some of the subsidies that will help people to get by and provide for their families, such as more access to housing that people can afford, more access to transportation to make it possible to get to jobs and school timely and reliably. So all of our policies tie into creating that opportunity. So I'll just mention a couple of things that I've done already in my 2 weeks as mayor. We are creating the Office of Equity and Inclusion that will be monitoring not only salaries, but wealth and access to business opportunities and the like. This will be very critical that we monitor, we report, and we address aggressively those disparities. Also, I have created some new divisions within county government that will be more community-centric. So for example, Morris Copeland, who headed our Office of Juvenile Services, is now our Chief for Community Services. And that includes 6 departments that are community service facing. And the challenge is to integrate those services so that people can better navigate them, make sure that the housing, the mental health, the social services of all kinds, and especially now in this pandemic, helping to prevent homelessness and evictions, which are on the horizon. So these are very, very critical ways that we're integrating the service portfolio for the county. Also on our public safety side, J.D. Patterson is our new Chief of Public Safety. We'll make sure that our community policing and our fire and corrections are all community-centric, community-oriented, community-informed. So I will be focused on building more stable, safe communities, getting us through this pandemic, building back better than ever, but also assuring that our women and families have every access to rebuild stronger than the way we found them pre-pandemic. So I hope that was not too long as an introduction, and I thank you for the opportunity to join you today.
Never too long. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Avra, Jain has an amazing career as well, much more than 2 minutes to tell, but we thank you so much for being here and ask you for that quick introduction.
Hi, yeah, this is Avra. Hello, everyone. Founder of the Vagabond group. I'm Annie Lord at Miami Homes for All through the Catalyst Connect group, where we did a lot of that research. I was part of that research, which was very helpful in trying to form a plan going forward. My first projects were actually with the county mayor. I'm so thrilled to have a strong mayor and have it be Mayor Cava. I think this is a real big opportunity for the city and the county to make some very big changes. I worked with Director Lou and his team. We did 24 units in Little Haiti. I'm in the process of doing something with the CRA, with the city. We're in partnership. And lastly, I was just recently working through Audrey Edmondson's office, again with the county, to find some other solutions. I look forward to today's conversation. Nice to see. And Mayor, I'm like the happiest person in the world. I didn't care what everything else was going on in the world, well, which may have worked out, but at least locally, we have an opportunity to do a lot. And the next 4 years is going to be an exciting time for us.
Amazing. Thank you, Avra. Mario, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mario Artecona. I am the CEO of Habitat for Humanity of Greater Miami, a 35-year resident here of Miami. I've worn a few hats. I've worked 11 years for Miami-Dade County. I worked 10 years in commercial real estate with the Codina Group. And my happiest years are now with Habitat for Humanity, where every day what you do means something to someone. So it's a very rewarding issue. I will probably echo a lot of what's going to be said here today. The scope of the affordable housing issue in Miami is dramatic. And thankfully, as large a problem as it is, we have a lot of very, very good people working together on this. And although it will be a very long road towards solving this issue, I think we have a great team in place, and with the leadership of our mayor and the folks here and the great work that Annie and her team at Miami Homes for All are doing, I think that the tools are going to fall into place. I can speak with some expertise strictly about Habitat, and Habitat is it's not going to solve the affordable housing issue in Miami. In fact, we're a little drop in the bucket, but I always say that's how you fill the bucket, is drop by drop. And so Habitat Miami focuses strictly on home ownership. We work with low-income families. Our cap is 80% AMI, but we really average around 65% AMI. And in the last, since our existence, we're close to, I think we just passed the 1,300 home barrier. So we are, every single one of those homes is a story. And just yesterday, we had a dedication ceremony for a Miami-Dade bus driver who's been trying to get in the program for a long time. And finally, she achieved it. And she has a brand new, beautiful home down in District 9. So the way that Habitat works is that we partner with families, and it's a very long and intricate application process. But if our families are financially qualified, meaning they do make less than 80%, and they also keep a good balance of not being overly in debt, which is very difficult to do, then they begin a process with Habitat, if they get approved, called sweat equity, in which they have to dedicate 300 hours working on their neighbors' homes and on their homes. At the end of that process, they purchase that home at a very reasonable price, and Habitat issues a 0% interest mortgage. It sounds simple, and it is simple, and it's a very repeatable model. And our default rate in the existence of our affiliate is at around 1%, which when you're dealing with low-income families, that's a remarkable number. So it's a model that works, and it's a model that's repeatable. Now, I would love to work with the leadership in Miami-Dade to grow this. I will have to say that without our partnership with Miami-Dade County, Habitat would not function as well as it does. Well over 90% of all the land that we receive from for putting homes is through Miami-Dade County. There's lots of scattered individual lots all over Miami-Dade that we, through the infill program, pluck, and the county takes an asset off their books that has to be insured and maintained. They give it to Habitat, and we turn that into a taxpayer. So it's a win-win for all. And I look forward to working with Mayor Levine Cava to expand this program. And well, she knows we've been friends for many years, and she knows that she can count on me for anything. But I am a man of very strong opinions, and I am willing to share that up at all times. So I thank you for your invitation and letting me participate. And as the only male in the panel, I promised my wife that I would be in my best behavior, so not to embarrass my team. So I will go to mute now before I say anything silly.
There'll be time for those strong opinions, Mario, and they will be welcome.
Always.
We're not about being boring here at the Women's Fund. We're here to talk about not boring, and talk about impossible to describe what Catalyst does in 2 minutes. We welcome you, Zelalem. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. So I'm Zelalem Adefris. I'm the Vice President of Policy and Advocacy at Catalyst Miami. Catalyst Miami is very hard to explain, but simply put, it's an anti-poverty organization operating in Miami-Dade County. We were founded in 1996 by our honorable mayor and co-panelist. It's pretty wonderful. And we provide direct services such as health insurance enrollment, financial coaching, free tax prep, as well as engage the community in community organizing and advocacy to address and solve issues that are most urgent to them. So I came on staff in 2016 to lead out our climate justice programming, and it was quickly apparent that affordable housing was not only related to our environment, but to every single issue in Miami-Dade County, and how urgent our affordable housing crisis really is. We actually, I think in 2018, 2019, did a series of events in different neighborhoods across Miami and asked people, if you were mayor, what would be, the top kind of couple of issues you would want to address? And affordable housing came up to the top, no matter if we were in South Dade or Overtown or Miami Gardens. So clearly it's something felt countywide. And so therefore, it's become a priority of the organization, a priority of our policy work. We partner a lot with Florida Housing Justice Alliance, Miami Homes for All, we can get another shout out, Community Justice Project, Miami Climate Alliance, the Workers Center, Smash. So, and anyways, it's wonderful to work in partnership with so many concerned organizations and individuals on this issue. So thank you for having us.
Amazing to have you all here. So we have two next parts before we get to the Q&A. One part is issues and one part is solutions. So we know the issues are complex, but we ask each of our panelists to just take 2 or 3 minutes to identify key issues. And we're going to start with you, Madam Mayor.
Well, I would say one issue is bringing to light where we are doing things right. There is a program in Boston that we emulated and brought forward a while back, and Women's Fund was very key in that, which was kind of accentuating the positive, bringing forward businesses that are doing the right thing vis-a-vis women employees. Because, like so much in bias, it's implicit, and until you bring it, make it visible, people don't acknowledge it. They think it's happening someplace else. So that's part of what I intended with my legislation, to create pay equity for county contracts, but there really wasn't a focus on implementing that. So as mayor and the Office of Equity and Inclusion, we want to expose who's doing it right and who's not, and that's by sharing data. I only have authority over what happens with county dollars, so we need partners in the private sector to highlight best practices outside of county government. So I think that's, I think with any change strategy, you need to have, first of all, awareness of the problem. And like I say, exposing it is what will force people to finally deal with what might otherwise be implicit bias. So nothing to be ashamed of, if you will. It's just, as I say, structural. So I do think that that's a critical issue for us, making these things visible. Also, we have to overcome the status that we're in now. For example, in my leadership team that I've been appointing for my cabinet, I have women, I have men, but I don't have as many women in key operations positions as I would like. And that's partly because women have to get that experience. So how do you get that experience? And I give you an example for contracting. There's a way that to be eligible for a county contract, you have to have had experience as a principal. So what some of the departments have done in the county, and I intend to bring countywide through my Office of Equity and Inclusion again, is to give credit to time, not necessarily as the owner of a company, but managing a project. So it's equivalent management experience. It's just not through the lens of ownership. So we have to find other things like this that allow us to create opportunity pipelines that get us past the usual kind of glass ceiling barriers. So I'll stop with those two examples of problems we can address.
Thank you so much. Avra.
Yeah, so I'd like to continue some of what the mayor mentioned. I think one of the challenges for her, anything within the political system, is you have all these districts and all these divisions. I think, Gloria, you sort of highlighted that, 32, and these ideas of efficiencies. And in order to solve this problem, the issue, as you mentioned, is funding. I always tell somebody, if you gave me a piece of, I am a builder, that's what I do, I execute. If you gave me a piece of dirt, I still couldn't build you something for 80% to 80% AMI, or even 100% AMI, average medium income. Habitat for Humanity does a great job, and they're able to offer 0% financing. But as when you go to build, the banks won't give you 0% financing. The regulators won't let them, even if they wanted to. So people need to understand it's really a funding issue. It's also a collaborative issue. So collectively, it's not about, you have to kind of pool the districts together and have a collective solution. It's not really this isn't a district by district issue. This is a Miami-Dade, the city issue. And through the efficiencies, maybe it becomes more feasible. And just want to highlight one thing. Remember when we talked about affordable housing, we're not talking about bricks and mortar. We're talking about people. We're talking about people's homes. And one of the things that we need to talk about, and again, tied to the funding and tied to transparency, is that what are the implications if we don't do this? And what does that cost us? You know, the cost of kids not feeling safe to go home leads to them dropping out of school, maybe violence and vandalism, parents and the stress of not having a healthy home. I've done projects where mothers almost lost their child because they were living in family services, thought the mother wasn't taking care of the child because of the mold in the house. In one of my other projects with the county, there was drug dealers and they shot up the parking lot, and we just changed one of the wood doors to metal doors. So, and there was a single mother with a child behind that door. So just remember, we're talking about people's lives and this idea of people feeling safe, the mental and emotional stress of that. So what are the social implications of affordable housing and not providing affordable housing?
That's as focusing as one can get. Thank you, Avra. Mario.
Well, I echo some of the things that have been said. I think the issue, and as I understand the question, is the issue of affordable housing as it pertains to women, and it's not just an issue of affordable housing. The income disparity leads to affordable housing issues. If Miami-Dade, everybody knows, has got one of the largest gaps between income and cost of living. If we were to be able to address livable wages and bring everybody's income up, that sort of generates a lot of funds, assuming that the folks who build and the landlords don't say, oh, everybody's making more money now, we can charge more, because then we would have gained nothing. I agree with Avra, if you want to go out there and build a 600 unit rental complex, no one is going to give you the loan at 0% interest. Habitat is that very unique model, and it's what I mentioned earlier. Whether that can be brought to a larger scale remains unproven just because of costs. So anyway, addressing the issue specifically as it relates to women, I think dealing with income disparity has a lot to do with things. And, as I said before, this is an overwhelmingly large problem that we will not be able to dissect here right now. But with strong leadership and a comprehensive plan like the ones that are being put together, I think we can tackle it and in individual pieces. And one thing that I always say is, the folks that are here that work in this industry, we want to solve all the problems. And sometimes when we do that, we spread ourselves a little too thin. And so there's a lot to be said for, I hate the term, but it applies, stay in your lane. If we build single family homes for low income women, let's focus on doing that as best as we can, rather than involving ourselves in 40 other different things that are going to take away time and focus and resources from that. And then we start doing lots of things very poorly rather than a few things really, really well. So I think that staying in your lane and focus on your mission is a great part. Tackle what it is that you are setting out to solve. And if everyone does that, then we start solving the problem collectively, rather than the entire bunch of people working on everything individually. So I will expand further in my next 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mario. Zelalem.
Yeah, I think just to add on the income, there's a pay gap, obviously, between women and men in the county. And I think the gender lens is important, and I'd like to add a racial lens as well. I think, that pay gap worsens for Black women and Hispanic women. And it's just really important as we talk about lenses to consider that as well. I think in order to address this question, I'll tell a little story, and this story isn't to hate on the county. It's just to share a little bit more about from a perspective of someone going through something. So, anyways, I was at the county, a couple years ago. Well, it must feel like a couple years ago now, with a group of community members that were speaking about the RAD process, which was they were one of the first buildings to transition to kind of a new public housing format, and so they had to move. And so I was there talking with them, and one woman pulled me aside and said, she said that she understands that their building desperately needs repairs, and it's not necessarily livable, but the timeline in which they had to move presented a lot of challenges for her. So she, there was no assistance to find a new place in the time frame. It was the middle of the school year, and women, I think in general, have to do a lot more with less, which I think is a theme I've been hearing, this morning. So she was concerned about pulling her kids out of school in the middle of a school year because there were no available units like in their current school district. She didn't have accessible and reliable transportation, so she was having to take off work to to take public transportation to all these different units to check them out throughout the county. A lot of the landlords they had a limit on how many people could live in the house. So she had multiple children, so it bumped up, the number of occupants, even though they're kids. So that limited, her ability to find an apartment within her budget. And yeah, I think all those things, make it really, really challenging. Even outside of the fact that we're in an affordable housing crisis for women in particular. And yeah, I do think there's, anyways, I'll just stop there because we're going to talk more, but it's just what I wanted to share to build up Avra's mention of the people side of the problem.
Well, thank you so much. As we launch our second poll, we're going to launch into the exciting part, which is always the solutions. So that's what we're here for. We're here to work together and give people takeaways on how they can support all of your work collectively, and what we can do. So to the solutions, we go to you, Madam Mayor.
Well, I spoke already about the importance of awareness. I do think that exposing the data is very key, but we do know that people don't respond first to data. They dismiss data if it doesn't relate to them emotionally. So telling a story is the way to get people to understand it. So for example, like Zelalem told a story about someone who actually trying to navigate had all these many additional barriers to accomplishing what was needed. So basically we have to pull people's heartstrings and then back it up with data so that we prove it's not an isolated case. I'm actually, just to go off topic for a minute, this is exactly what I'm struggling with today about COVID. So I don't think it was mentioned here today that I am home with COVID. So just to add a little personal lens, I'm happy to report that my symptoms are mild. I seem to, I do believe I will survive this bout. Unfortunately, so many have not. You may have seen in the news this morning that Baptist Hospital is now turning away patients. They have no more capacity. And yesterday I had a call with all of the CEOs of the hospitals and hospital systems in South Florida. And the call for action from them to not overwhelm our hospital system. We got a little complacent maybe the last surge because we brought in all these nurses from out of town. We paid them extraordinary amounts of money and we were able to expand our capacity. That's no longer the case because the surge is happening simultaneously all around the country. So we really do not have any cushion here. And then how do we speak about this in a way that will move people to take the precautions that they might not already be taking? And it was said that we need to do it through stories. We need to talk about the people that we know that have lost their lives or lost loved ones, and not just focus on the data of the hospital census. So to bring that back to the issue of women and economic mobility, what does it mean? And actually the pandemic, I think it's also always good to communicate about something in a way that connects to where people are right now, connecting people where they are. So everybody knows we're in the middle of a pandemic. Everybody knows we've had an economic downturn. How does that affect women all the more so? And we know, as again, Zelalem said, women are bearing the brunt of the childcare all the more so. They're more likely to be the ones to step out of the workplace when children need to be supervised for at-home learning, this sort of thing. So they're getting, gains that have been made in upward mobility for women are being lost as a result of this pandemic. So I think we need to bring awareness from a human side, individual stories, as well as back it up with the data, and then talk about the recovery, as Mario did in terms of housing as a critical part of recovery for women, and then each of us has our role to play. I will just say one other thing. We are facing a crisis of increased homelessness as a result of the evictions that will be in the pipeline. Many of them are already, about 6,000 households are already in the pipeline in Miami-Dade County for eviction, and only are holding on not only because of the CDC moratorium, which expires the end of December, but because the former county mayor and me as current mayor are not allowing the police department, the sheriffs, to effectuate writs of possession. That cannot go on forever. We have to come up with a strategy that will help our landlords pay their bills, as well as to keep people housed. And of course, women are going to be the most affected. So we need to tell that story. We need to galvanize the resources and bring everybody together. And that is what I will plan to do with your help. Thank you.
You can count on us, Madam Mayor. And those emerging solutions are why we keep on coming here every month, because the solutions and the issues do change, and know that you can count on us for that platform. Avra, solutions. What do you see?
Yeah, no, first of all, I would like to ask the mayor, I know she's assigned somebody to the, to address, inequities. Have you assigned somebody in your cabinet who will focus just on affordable housing? Just curious. I think it's unfortunate that the mayor, if you can answer, I don't know.
I can, yes. Yeah. Thank you, Avra. And of course, we know that you have been at the forefront of creative solutions, and thank you for that. I'm sort of starting, look, I've been mayor for 2 weeks and 2 days, and in that time have had quite a few challenges, including my own illness now. But we do have somebody assigned on the housing issue, which is someone you already know, Jason Smith, who was my legislative director. So he's going to be part of equity and inclusion, and he is focusing on housing right at the moment. But we do need to bring together creative minds like yours, and that is part of how I'll address it. I also just want to say that while there are many, many things that I need to tackle, I do not have resources within my county budget to create all of the positions that I would like to. So we're going to be turning to the private sector and philanthropy to help us as well to step up to some of these creative opportunities.
Okay, that's good. I mean, and the funding is the big issue. It's unfortunate with the timing and with COVID that the city wasn't able to pass the bond. It seems like, again, just for at least on the city portion. So, funding will remain an issue. One of the things that, Zelalem, you talked about earlier is when we talk, the because we're talking, solutions here, is taking existing NOAA housing, right? Natural occurring affordable housing. In some ways, that's the low-lying fruit because those
Right.
are properties that are already in inner neighborhoods, better locations. You don't have to go through as many processes, Gloria, in terms of all the steps, right? Because they're existing.
Right.
But I can tell you it's just as expensive to do it right than it is to build new, which is one of the things that, the mayor and the county will have to deal. When do you build new and when do you take the NOAA housing? The good thing about NOAA housing or existing housing is people don't get displaced or they don't have to be displaced. So back to what you had talked about with a mother and their child going to school, trying to find new friends, whether it's their church or where they go shopping or whatever. So I think the NOAA housing, National Occurring Affordable Housing, is some of the lower lying fruit. It can happen more quickly. I know Director Lou's very focused on that. That's where I started with him. So I think that's part of the solution. I mean, funding ultimately is going to be the issue. I do, on a positive note, as you started, Mayor, I do want to give credit to the residents of Miami who voted to have a $100 million bond as part of the previous election. So the residents want to address this issue. I think the residents care. I mean, the stories matter. I do say, again, as part of the solutions, the one thing that I will tell you as somebody who's doing it in the space, when we talk about more low-lying fruit, Mayor, we have to find a way to make the real estate taxes appropriate. So to what was spoken about earlier, it's like, especially if we take natural occurring affordable housing or lots, these are properties that are not contributing very much already to the tax pool. But when I come in and renovate or I come in and build, it is the real estate taxes that I'm being assessed that are really being passed through to the tenants or are prohibiting me from making it feasible to build.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about funding, there's money to spend and there's money to save.
Okay.
I can't save to build, right? So I can't build. It costs me what it costs me to build healthy housing. Where I can save is my fixed operating costs. So if I could, my one thing I would say to you or anybody that's going to make an initiative here is how do we address the real estate taxes? It won't hurt because these are properties that we're not talking about taking real estate taxes down, having less income. We're talking about why raise them. If I'm willing to do a project with a 30-year covenant of true affordability, 80% of AMI being the target, we've got to keep the real estate taxes abated.
Very good. Thank you, Avra. We'll follow up with you on that point.
All right. That's my
Thank you.
contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mario.
That's a very good point that Avra made, because we have faced that situation before, that we go through all the steps and find a product that is at 30% of income, their payment, and then all of a sudden their taxes went up by 140% or something.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of working with the property appraiser's office, and they're very receptive to that. Sometimes they just don't know. Whoever puts the information just sees it as a sale. They don't go into the covenants. They don't go into the affordability things. So if you bring the problem to their attention, they will help you address it. So it's just a matter of better communicating that. But it's a very, very serious issues that we have faced far too often. So in terms of solutions, it's a very multi-pronged approach. It obviously, government legislation is a key component. I think we're going to have to look at some getting out of our comfort zone when it comes to zoning and when it comes to size of units and setbacks and all these things, that we really have to take a comprehensive approach. That it seems to me that we are putting more obstacles rather than removing them. It seems like there's more zoning overlays and charrettes that are leading for, the perfect urban planning. Well, the perfect urban planning and creating the necessary number of units doesn't always work hand in hand. So it's a matter of what your priority is to put more people in homes or to have everything look really, really pretty and walkable. They're both important, but really sometimes you need to prioritize which one takes precedence. You know, land availability is a serious concern. And as I mentioned before, the county is very generous as it relates to single lots. As it relates to larger parcels, of which there are some, and I don't want to bite the hand that feeds me, because we were just the recipient of a beautiful piece of land that's going to help dozens and dozens of families. But the process needs to be tweaked a little bit, I believe, and focused more on merit and on a plan on how is it going to affect the end user. Right now, availability of land has a lot to do with your relationships with your individual county commissioners. If you have a great relationship, you may get a lot of land. If you don't have a great relationship, so it's not really merit-based, and it should be. Also, and I'm not picking on the government, Madam Mayor, but because you guys, like I said, are great partners. But let's say Habitat will get a piece of land from the Public Housing Department, and we get that piece of land. We have a clock that starts ticking. In 24 months, you need to deliver a single, family home. Taxpayer, great. Well, then you go to Public Works, and oh no, you can't build on that land. And then zoning says, oh, you got to go to a variance. And so one department is telling you to do this, but 6 other departments are showing you how you can't. So before that parcel gets given to a developer, a little pre-development analysis from within the county, DERM can sign off on it, Public Works can sign off on it, zoning can sign off on it. It takes a year and a half off your project, 5 years off my life. It's just very cumbersome. And if there was better communication between the departments, I think it would be very, very beneficial. I think the innovation has a lot to do with this. Folks like us, we want to build a single family home for everyone. That is no longer realistic. The days of, a big community of single family homes, I think, are behind us. We have to look at going vertical or townhomes or duplex or quadruplex, whatever it may be. It may not be the ultimate white picket fence dream house that people have always wanted, but such is the condition of life. And again, education is a huge component. One of the things that leads to the success at Habitat is we put all of our applicants through a very long workshop program. There's 12 workshops focusing on credit, on wills and estates, I actually teach a civics class. It's unrelated to this, but no one else is teaching civics, so I took it upon myself, and it's something I enjoy. But folks need to know that when you make that purchase on a credit card, you are affecting your income ratios for years. And that $60 pair of sneakers ends up costing you $110 when you take in all these things add up. And so when you go qualify for a program, be it Habitat or another, you find yourself not being able to do so because you just never really understood the repercussions of credit and maintaining that well. And lastly, advocacy. What we're doing here is, spreading the word. We need to stay on top of our state legislatures about Sadowski. I echo what Gloria said. We finally reached the mountaintop, and the mountain collapsed on us with COVID. So we made great strides. I think we need to keep the pressure on with state, local, federal, municipal, anyone who will listen, putting this issue at the very, very front. And lastly, cooperation. We all need to work together. And like I mentioned with the county, if we can get all the different departments to weigh in on something, then that would really lead to making the process a lot quicker and a lot more efficient. So there's lots of things that can be done. You know, I'm hopeful that we will tackle those.
Looks like it's all about everybody working together. Zelalem, solutions from your perspective.
Yeah, definitely. So just in general, I think in creating solutions on the intersections of women and access to affordable housing, it'd be great if there were more women that are currently, you know, struggling to find affordable housing at the decision-making table. I think it's, you know, when you're directly impacted, you can figure out the best way to go about something, because you, like everyone has modeled, you kind of go through the headaches of the process. And so with that being said, we have like a few entry points for people to get involved at Catalyst. We have a program called HEAL. It stands for Housing, Equity, Advocacy, and Leadership. It's a 7-week grassroots leadership training program on how to become a affordable housing advocate. And the next session will be in February or March. So after I list off these, I'll put like the appropriate contact person in the chat if you're interested, and just let them know. We also do some affordable housing organizing that's open to anyone, focused on Miami-Dade County through the Miami Climate Alliance. So I will stick my email in the chat if you want to get involved there. I'm also, we're a member of the Florida Housing Justice Alliance. So if you're a renter, a concerned renter, or a manufactured home owner, that is a wonderful place to get involved. And as the mayor mentioned, there are thousands of people on the roster for eviction in Miami-Dade County. And so there are some organizations working on eviction defense trainings for the public if you want to volunteer. So I believe those are Miami Workers Center and Miami Tenants Union, and I'll put their email, their websites, their contact information in the chat as well. And then lastly, I think, you know, the other panelists spoke to a lot of the barriers in this, but I think building housing for those that need it most is really important. We all need it, but I know just reading the newspaper, I sometimes get really excited to see like a great project for affordable housing, and then I read into it, it's like 140% AMI, just like pretty high income in my book, at least in my perspective. So I think doing all that we can and reducing those barriers, as others have mentioned, to building housing for those with 50% AMI or less is going to be like critically important to our community for many reasons, but also I think like the viability of our region. I don't think we want to be shipping in our workforce from other counties, and that's been happening to some extent with the Florida Keys, and where I could see us being up next, which is not. I don't think that's good for our for everyone's mental well-being, having to travel so far in just to work here, and also for our, you know, our economy as well. So. Yeah, those are a few. I'll put them in the chat so you all can get involved in what interests you.
Thank you so much. Now, as we launch poll number 3, we're going to remind you, I don't know how much time we're going to have, but we'll get to as many questions and answers as we can. If you haven't posted them, please go ahead and do so. I want to say that in the chat, there's a lot of great communications going on of offering of services, offering of not only Gloria's white paper, but Miami Homes for All resources. Malia from the amazing Leap, the ladies, is asking for some resources there. So I invite everybody to communicate powerfully on this chat as well as we go into the Q&A. I'm going to combine a couple of questions that have come up about the stressors and the mental health aspects of affordable housing, and also a really specific question from one of our board members, Dan Conley-Graham, about supportive housing for independent housing for those who are facing mental health challenges. Who would like to address that? go ahead and unmute yourselves and speak up, Mayor.
Yes, I'll just say a few things about that. Clearly, we know that mental health challenges are huge in our community. We are tops among in the country for issues of severe mental health. So, housing is just the physical. It doesn't really deal with all of the related wraparound kinds of services that people need. One of the things that has come up as we convert public housing to more mixed income and mixed use, that we continue to have some of the programming that has existed in public housing to assist people living in those places. And I've spoken to our housing director about making sure that there's space available for co-location of social services. And this is something that we definitely want to prioritize going forward, setting aside space, partnerships with community organizations. Yesterday, I was on a panel with Judge Steve Leifman talking about the new mental health program that will be housed in the facility on 7th Avenue, which would be an alternative for incarceration for people with serious mental health issues, because he puts it at about 50% of those in jail are, have serious mental health issues. I know when I visited jails early in my tenure as commissioner, I was told that up to 80% of the residents were taking some sort of medication related to mental health issues. So, we're talking very serious challenges for the homeless population, for our incarcerated, and just for people who are living on the edge. And especially in times of anxiety and stress such as these, where it's pretty universal. I was able to bring a grant from the Health Foundation, working with NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, to do kind of mental health prevention for teenagers, particularly online program to help deal with the stigma, which is another part of it. I mean, communities that are not used to seeking mental health services. I was hearing, for example, in the Haitian community, there are not that many Creole speaking providers of mental health services. So even if you overcome the barriers to accessing those services, where do you get those services for a unique population? So we just have a huge challenge. And this again is why I think I mentioned it here, but this is my third panel this morning. So I apologize if I'm mixing up my comments, but I am creating an integrated approach to social services in the county through the appointment of Morris Copeland to be the chief of community services. So he has in his portfolio housing, social services, animal services, libraries, and arts and culture, so that we can have a more comprehensive approach. And of course, we will only do it as a county if we do it collectively with all the other serving organizations. Back in the day, I was part of the origination of something called the Alliance for Human Services that looked at a more comprehensive approach to how we deliver all of these programs, looked at the needs in the community, the availability of resources, what were the gaps, and then promoted the funding opportunities to fill those gaps. So that's where we need to get back to. We need to have plans for all of our children that are comprehensive. We need to have plans for housing across all of these silos and divides, and plans for the mental health needs, et cetera. So, if we don't do it that way, then we're inefficient in how we use limited dollars, and it's very, very difficult for people to navigate these services.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. If I may just hop on to our next question from Dr. Maria Lateva from FIU, and I think this one is for you, Avra. Can you address the NOAA issue about some of those buildings, how cost prohibitive it is, and what the balance is there?
Yeah, so when you talk about NOAA housing, natural occurring affordable housing, you're really talking about, in most cases, slum conditions, right? I mean, there's Rebuild America, which does, you can go and fix a kitchen. If it's 1970s, 1980s, there's things you can do. But most NOAA housing is over 50 years old. In fact, it's really preservation work. When we go in and do NOAA housing, we're doing historic preservation. I will tell you, of the 7 buildings I've done, none of the pipes, none of the sewer pipes below the building were connected. None of the sewer pipes were connected. These are families living in outhouses. And there's somewhere, I mean, I don't even know how people living on the 2nd floor didn't take a bath and fall through to the lower level. I mean, it's just, so they're basically people choosing to live in slum conditions. When they're not choosing, they don't have a choice. They have to live in slum conditions, one, because if their landlord comes in and fixes it up, they have to raise the rent. And they don't want to move because they're living in communities that they want to stay in, you know, like in Overtown, Little Haiti, and they're close to where they want to work. It's where their kids go to school. So NOAA housing, to rebuild it, it's like building new. All you get is to properly do it is a shell. If it's over 50 years old, you have to replace all the electrical, all the plumbing, and what you don't want to do is just slap on a new kitchen cabinet and behind the walls, the pipes aren't connected. So when you talk about NOAA housing, it's really historic preservation. Some of the challenges I've had, and which, you know, I think I'm glad the mayor's here, is in one of our projects, one of the issues we're having with some of our projects, the moratorium for eviction, you know, is a must. I think the challenge for you, Mayor, is how to narrow the scope a little bit. We've now had in some of our projects, let's just say bad actors, you know, people that are working, they don't need the help, yet they're taking the help. And I know in another project where they're having, there's a drug dealer in another project down the block, and because of the eviction, the moratorium on eviction, they're openly dealing drugs, and they know that they're protected because nobody will evict them. So I think today we're talking about solutions as we move forward with the moratorium, which I know is a must. Think about how you can maybe narrow the scope so the bad actors aren't taking away from the good actors, and also make sure that the residents that are staying in these locations are safe. And you have to, find some way to allow for people that are endangering their neighbors to be evicted.
So if I could I respond? I'm very aware of what you're saying, Avra, and definitely we're going to be looking at all of those factors. I also want to say, and it was in, I guess, yesterday's New Times, the article that maybe Zelalem referenced about someone who was constructively evicted by having their utilities turned off. And since I am a former legal services attorney and I represented people in landlord-tenant disputes and, very, very familiar with these issues, I brought legislation to urge the state to take more action on these illegal constructive evictions, which nobody else, I must say, was paying much attention to. But we know that that's what landlords do under the circumstances. And unfortunately, Florida law doesn't make it easy for people to challenge that. The burden is on the resident. At the same time, we do know that there are people who do have funds but are not paying the rent, or who are simply bad tenants, and we have to be able to balance those things as well. So definitely trying to thread that needle, Avra, and again, looking forward to continuing this conversation with all of you to get it right.
Madam Mayor, I hate to pick on you when you're not feeling great.
Okay.
But I'm going to combine a couple of questions and issues that have come up here.
Sure, absolutely.
So I'm going to combine two. One, the idea of the real estate taxes being such a major issue. When we debriefed with all of our panelists before meeting today to make this the best possible convening that we could have, Avra spoke about issues with the state. That's not all in our purview to be able to change things, that we need to work collaboratively with the state on, specifically on real estate issues. If you could address that. And also I'm going to throw in what Mario mentioned about the covenants, about how, housing, with sale, of course, things can change. If there's systems that could be implemented to help fix that.
Well, as far as the real estate tax question, I think we have various ways that we try to incentivize building housing that people can afford. Exactly how we would go about building that into the property tax. I don't know the answer, whether that requires state action, whether it could be accomplished locally, how the property tax appraiser would be involved, but certainly all of it worth exploring. Typically what we do is waive impact fees and things like that, which are also a way of reducing taxes because, basically that's an important way that the county collects dollars for infrastructure, which we have inadequate dollars for infrastructure. So, but it's a public policy trade-off. Do we need the housing more than we might need that infrastructure? Okay, or like Mario also raised, are some of the maybe even some of the guidelines that are there for aesthetic purposes or protection, can some of those things be deemed less important than the priority of getting the housing? And I'm all for opening that discussion. We don't want perfection to be the enemy of the good. I don't think most of those are things that can be done administratively, but I'm open to learning about that. As far as covenants, I'm not really sure exactly what the question is. I mean, a covenant can be waived, for example, by the county commission by a 2/3 vote. So I think if that's the route, maybe there's, in some cases, maybe there's a way of streamlining that or creating in our master plan something that would kind of give priority to something that achieves certain desirable policy goals. One of the things that as mayor I'm planning to do is increase our planning capacity. So I think all the panelists would realize that we don't have a very robust planning department. Over the years, the number of people that are called planners in Miami-Dade County has decreased dramatically. That is why I'm creating a dotted line reporting to my office for the planning department to try to beef it up, enhance it. I believe that our planning has been reactive rather than proactive. And these kinds of priorities that we're discussing don't get addressed because there's really nobody to kind of call attention to it at the level of planning and then turn it into actionable steps. So, I'm not going to be a passive mayor. I'm going to be an active mayor. And we are going to try to find the way to have these conversations at the level of policy at county government. So I've created 2 new work areas in my cabinet. One is for innovation and performance, headed by Rahel Welda-Jesus, and that area will be responsible for community engagement, for innovation inside government and out, but really to make sure that our workforce is approaching these problems in new ways, out of the box thinking, as well as our Office of Equity and Inclusion will be housed there. And then the other office is the policy office, which there has not been within the mayor's office up to this point. And George Andrews, who has been chief of staff for Eduardo Padron for 16 years at Miami-Dade College, is coming to head that office. And within it will be resilience, economic development, our intergovernmental work, and a dotted line to planning. As I said, that includes, it doesn't have an explicit housing designated person for lack of funding, but it does, the housing person, Jason, is going to be on the equity and inclusion side, but we will be building to have more expertise for planning around housing and mobility as well.
So exciting. Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the chat, there have been some really interesting, people are looking for creativity. Can we talk about creativity for a moment? And I'm going to go to you, Zelalem, because, Catalyst is often, tell us what's going on, what real people are telling you, and what kind of creative solutions are coming up. I mean, container housing is coming up. I know there are all different kinds of interested to look at some things. Zelalem, can you talk about some of the creative solutions that you are seeing or envisioning?
Yeah, so we have there are kind of like two buckets. In one of the groups I talked about, we have like 11, I guess, demands that we would love to see from local government. I don't know how super creative they are, but basically in July we had an event where we had people come together and talk about the issues around development and housing in their neighborhoods. And so, and then since July, we've had about 200 people involved in creating those demands. So, I mean, I think things that people really want to see are like very much like prior notice when a development is coming up in their neighborhood, and not because usually when we see the notice go up, it's kind of at the end of the process. The project's been worked on for years. More community engagement around, I think some of these issues are really specific. So about like what neighbors really want to see in their neighborhoods. I'm working with Miami Homes for All and some other community members on Public Land for Public Good initiative, which is like working to create a set of standards and deep community engagement process around before public land is sold or given out. We would love to see like some sort of enforceable analysis around the impact of displacement before development, especially very large ones, are okayed, as well as the impacts on climate change, because we know that's very important to our community. There's really so much. And we actually have like a slideshow in the HEAL program, like a whole session dedicated to like solutions to affordable housing crises from places around the world. Container housing didn't come up, but I think more like cooperative housing and different forms of ownership. Community land trusts are a very popular one. But I think in order to make a lot of these things feasible and come to life, we have to address a lot of the regulatory and financing barriers that the other panelists have mentioned. I could go on forever. I'm trying to pause.
That's great because, you know, listening is truly one of the most creative acts that any of us can do. And Catalyst is amazing at listening. So that is very creative. Avra, I bet you have a couple of creative solutions, do you?
Well, you know, and again, remember Miami, we're unique, right? We have these very strict built goods and of course, anticipated you know, there's things that have been refined as a result of climate change issues. Container housing, it's a fun idea, but it is not feasible for Miami. You know, and also remember, again, we're back to to people. A lot of people don't, like, I think container housing is hip and cool, but a lot of people don't. If you go to Jamaica, I mean, I have a property, we have a hotel in Jamaica. When, you know, if you told somebody I'm going to put you in a container house, that they would think that's like at the really, really desperate end of housing, right? Because you associate those with containers that come off a boat. So whatever community we're in, we have to think of it culturally too as well, right? So container housing may be hip and cool for me, but it may not be hip and cool for other people. And the county did do a project down south, and it was not, and they came to the same conclusion, which I had come to previously. It's just as expensive to build container housing, just like it is NOAA housing. You know, anytime that you build housing and you put in the infrastructure, you know, the shell of the building isn't what's expensive. What's expensive is the electrical, the plumbing, the mechanical, the floor, you know. So whether it's a container, whether it's an existing building or you're building new, the costs don't change a lot. Sometimes the time does. I do think that there is some innovative prefab housing that's going on, but it's expensive. The only thing that really saves you is time. If I was to do anything innovative right now, I think if the county could find a way, or the city to approve it, I think a lot of people talk about these auxiliary dwelling units, people that have housing, that have houses where could they in the back, we call them mother-in-law units or whatever. Could you take a tiny house concept, a prefab concept, and put it as an auxiliary unit? Because a studio unit is a lot of time what a lot of single people need, or a single mother with a young child. Could that be a quick solution? Auxiliary housing, auxiliary dwelling units, where and have it be something more portable, mobile, and and have these solutions for hurricanes, either a strapping solution or close up solution. So I think that's something that could be innovative and effective. Other than that, again, we're down to funding, and I think we've got to find the creative solutions here, or how do we projects.
So I'm going to call that your call to action, and I'm going to ask to look at creativity and to look at funding, and I'm going to just impose that call to action on you, Avra, and then I'm going to ask each of our other panelists, and I'm going to go this way. Mario, do you have a call to action that you'd like to share with this amazing group of people who are on and behind the screen?
Absolutely. Write a huge check to Habitat. No, I'm just kidding. I did that for my development director, Maureen, our development officer, is one of the attendees. So I just wanted her to know that, I put in a pitch. But no, the call to action really is, well, for the general layperson out there, I think they can really get engaged in advocacy, in contacting their legislators, really understanding what the issue is. It's all great to like something on Facebook or to follow a page. That's not advocacy, folks. Let's not fool ourselves. Advocacy goes far beyond that. That is one step, but advocacy by Facebook, I have some serious issues. When it comes to innovation with us, Habitat, we move very slowly towards innovation, but we're addressing multifamily and really changing the way that we do things. It will remain to be seen how this all works out. I do want to mention one thing, and the mayor made a good point. Sometimes with the best of intentions, we solve one issue but create another one. I'm going to mention septic tanks for a second here. Septic tanks have become the enemy because everybody says that they're really going to affect the issues with sea level change. Well, if we're building a house in South Dade and a septic tank costs $9,000, but the county's requiring you to put in a $35,000 sewer line to connect that one house, it's easier to just walk away from that than to create a project that is not economically feasible, that no one will be able to afford. So that's just one example that when we make septic tanks the bad guy, in reality, that would be the only way to get that family into that home. That's just one example. So, every time we pass a new zoning code, or every time we pass any form of legislation, although it is very well intentioned, there are repercussions to it. And we just need to keep that in mind and not be so dogmatic that there's no process for a variance or for looking at it on a case-by-case basis. Not all septic tanks are bad. Not all, setback variances are bad. Sometimes these are things that you need to do in order to place a family in a home. And I just think that as we look at innovation and we look at methodologies, that we really need to build in a little bit of flexibility to get more units built.
Flexibility is a call to action. Working together is a call to action. Zelalem, you gave us great calls to action. So Madam Mayor, final call to action from you, please.
Well, I would appreciate all the good ideas that were generated here today. If they could be put into a document, that would be very helpful. That would be a call to action. And obviously that we continue to explore all of them for feasibility and at what level the change must occur. So it's been very enlightening. So that would be my call to action. Also, I did quickly read through the chat best I was able and tried to capture some very specific suggestions there. So again, there are some very important implementation ideas that I want to take into account, such as how to get grant funding for that chief housing officer. That definitely strikes me as exactly up my alley. Then also it reminds me that, look, I come from the community. I'm really a community organizer by training and heart. And I have told everybody it's inside outside strategies. It's when the people lead, the leaders follow. You're doing the hard work in the community of working with the people directly affected and analyzing innovative solutions, bringing them forward. I want to be sure that you don't leave me behind as you're doing that. And some of what you've done happened when I was a commissioner, one of 13. I'm in a different role. I need your help to bump up, as we like to call it, key change strategies that we can be working on now in my new role. And also to, I guess, a call to action is just remember, 2 weeks and 2 days have I been in office, including COVID, and just give me a little space to move forward. We have a number of groups, including represented here today, who have aggressive change agendas for me and want to see progress in the first 100 days. And I'm all about progress in the first 100 days. Unfortunately, not too many of these things can I solve in the first 100 days. But I will work with you the hardest that I possibly can to get it done as quickly as possible. So thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Mayor.
Madam Mayor, I know I'm speaking from everyone on this call that you can count on us. We thank you so much for your leadership. We thank everybody on and off the screen for your leadership. Please give us our feedback because we're using it. We know how to use it. Please give us your feedback.
Mayor, get well. We need you. You take care of yourself. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Please, please, please. And Mayor, you know that we'll be asking you back and we'll be in constant contact. Our next Impact Collaborative, the first Thursday of every month is now, it's actually going to be 2021, not 2020. It's exciting. Forced labor, sex trafficking, and exploitation of children, a parallel pandemic. We know all these issues are interdigitated, and we thank you for all you do for our community, each and every one of you. Stay safe, stay strong. Good health, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mario, for putting this together.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.